Good morning, Flag Church. It's good to be back in the pulpit. I've been in the church, but it's good to be back in the pulpit. So glad you're here. For some of you, I haven't had a chance to stare at you for the past 3 weeks, so now I remember some of you changed seats. I'll tell you. Keith and Amanda, I love the fact that they're connected to a life group. I want to introduce you to someone. If I get the PowerPoint up, but I do, never mind, it's good. This is Ryan and Sherelle Jones. Ryan and Sherelle. Ryan and Sherelle showed up when in 2006 when they were students at Pittsburgh State. They came because their friend Darlene brought them to Flag. So we were meeting back over other side of the building. They started coming kind of not fully committed to Christ at the time. But they came back 2 weeks ago for a visit. And because of Facebook, been able to stay in contact with them and see the cool things that's been going on in their life. While they were here, they were dating. They ended up getting married. We did their wedding twice. We did it once here with about 6 people, and then 6 months later, we did it again. Today is actually their anniversary of their second wedding. For about 7 or 8 years, and we got them married in Timmons Chapel. But they moved away. They moved over to Jacksonville, Florida, and now they're in Des Moines. And when they came back for a visit, we were connecting, and where do you think we went to eat? They used to live here. Where do you think we went to eat? Mall Deli, exactly. What did he order? French dip, exactly. One of the questions I asked him was, what's the most surprising thing about your life now that you wouldn't have expected? I think that's a pretty good question. Might pause for some thought and some deep consideration, but no, boom, he had his answer. Church! He was blown away that his life right now is involved and revolving around a local church. They have growth track at the church they attend in Des Moines. He leads it. They lead it. Because when they came here, they got connected. That was back in 2006. They got connected. They didn't just attend, they got connected to the point where when they came back to visit, one of the things they wanted to make sure that they found was connecting to a church. And then when they moved to Des Moines, I remember seeing them on Facebook, one of the first things they were concerned about was getting connected to a church. And did they find a big church in Des Moines where they could hide in the back? No. They found a church that was only about, actually they showed up on day one. The church was launching that day. The church celebrates their 2-year anniversary sometime this next month. Their amazing testimony on what we're trying to accomplish here and continue to move forward. We exist to build vertical and horizontal relationships. That's why we exist. If you have your bulletins, you can go ahead and pull them out and follow along if you want. If you didn't get one, lift your hand. We're still working on trying to get our ushers at the sanctuary doors here, worship center doors, to be the bulletin people. So as we in that transition, thanks for your patience. But Jesus was asked a question. They're trying to trip him up, and they said, hey, Jesus, hey, got a question for you. What's the greatest commandment? Because people would have argued about that all the time. What's the GOAT? What's the GOAT? Greatest of all time. Is it Tom Brady? Unfortunately, probably so. But who's the GOAT? What's the GOAT? They're asking, what's the greatest of all commandments? Come on, we got the top 10. We know what the top 10 are, but we got about 600 more of those, and then we add more on those so we don't accidentally break those. So what's the greatest? Cricket. And Jesus kind of throws it down and then drops the mic. Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. That's the first and the greatest, and then he does not pause. He continues because the second is just as important as the first. Second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself, vertical and horizontal. In Christian circles, that passage is called the Great Commandment. And this passage on the screen now is called the Great Commission. Go and make disciples of all nations. Doesn't matter where they're from. They can even be from East Africa, Joy and Joseph. It does not matter where they are from, but make disciples of all nations. So on Tuesday morning, we have our staff meeting here at the church because the pastors are off on Monday. And the first thing that we do is let's celebrate wins. What's a win from this past week of ministry? And a win is, was someone who was far from God closer? That's a win. Was someone who was far from people closer to people now? That's a win. If we get people connected to Christ but not connected to God, they're not going to stay connected to Christ. And if what I'm sharing with you sounds familiar, it's because this is our vision. This is our heartbeat. If you know this so well, you could move your mouth and say the words with me. That means we're doing a good job of communicating it. So is this review and remind and rewind for some of you? Yes, but maybe it's also a reignite and to get back on track on where we're headed and why we're headed there. And it's not just for a status quo or to keep the bills paid. Whatever it takes short of sin to reach people. Whatever it takes short of sin to reach people. And if we refuse to do whatever it takes, eventually we'll do nothing at all. Then the Great Commission becomes the Great Omission because we're no longer on mission. that Jesus had for the church. And I know some of us have the shirts on like I have on today, and I totally get the fact that it's a somewhat misnomer, because it's not my church. It's his. And we know that it's his. The branch that I come to happens to be Flag, and that's the one that I attend, so I love my church, no doubt about it, but in no way am I trying to insinuate it's not his church. But if it's his church, he's the founder. And there's a quote I want to share with you. It's not a Bible quote. From what I can tell, it's not even from a Christian, but I love it because it nails it. Does this place exist to maintain and perpetuate the status quo, or am I here to do the work the radical founder had in mind when we started? And when did we start? Not in 1993. We started AD 33. Are we carrying out, as a church, Family Life Assembly of God, Flag Church, what the radical founder had in mind? Because he was so radical, they killed him for it. I heard it phrased at one point where an archbishop was saying, they killed Jesus. Wherever Paul went, there was a riot. And whenever I show up, they serve tea. Let's be people that when we show up, something's going to happen. That when we show up as a church, that there's going to be some impact happening. Because when you arrived at Flag, and you think back to your very first Sunday, I think it's usually easy for people to do that because the tension was high the first Sunday you came in. Because you don't know what to expect. You may have checked it out online, but you're still not sure. Are they weird? Are they goofy? Where are the snakes? All that kind of stuff. So you remember something about your first Sunday. When you arrived at Flag, everyone that was here for you. The parking lot people were here for you. They weren't here for me. They don't show up when I show up. The parking lot people weren't here to help the 8:30 people park their cars. They were here for you. The people serving refreshments were here for you. The people to help your kid get checked in were here for you. But if you are now here and now you are connected to this church, will you help us reach those who are not here yet and take the next step so we can do that? So I'll tell you what breaks our heart in staff meeting on Tuesday morning. When we look over the list and we see a name and we're still trying to figure out, oh man, I've seen that name before. I can't put a face with that name yet. Oh wait. When I see that name, Ted Furry, who's been on there for 5 weeks in a row, and I can't go, oh crud, who is Ted Furry? I know I met him one time. Oh, where is that? And then we will go to the ends of Facebook to find your name and your face. Because we will go to the ends of the internet to put your name and your face together in our heart. And that's Ted Furry right there. Why? Because next time he comes, I'm going to call him by name. Why? So I can have manipulation power. No! So somehow, some way, he can know we're trying. And that we care for him as a person, not just a number. Although we count numbers, but every number's got a name. Come on, some of you can say it with me. Every name's got a story, and every story matters to God. Every story matters to God. So the series, tied off the I Love My Church, is This Is Who We Are. Number one, we form circles. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Why do we form circles? Because circles are better than rows. You're in rows today. Rows are good. But some of you are lonely sitting in a row. We form circles. Circles are better than rows. Two, we serve selflessly. Why? Because it's how you grow a church. No, forget that. Mold grows. The goal is not growth. We serve selflessly because Jesus came to serve and not to be served. That's next week's message. And then lastly, we give generously. Why? Because Jesus said it's more blessed to give than receive. And the person who gives, and it's not just finances, way beyond that, the person who gives is more blessed than the person who does not. Today's focus is about forming circles because we need more circle makers in our church. Now, that's not a certain moment in our history right now. We will always need more circle makers, people to form life groups. So I want to give you a chance to brag. How many life groups do you think we currently have right now? Whisper to someone so you can go ahead and say, I'm awesome, you're not, if you get it right, okay? And you can say, you got to buy lunch. Now, if you went to first service, don't cheat. How many life groups do we have? The correct answer is 23. 23. And there's about 200 people in those life groups. How many life group leaders could we use? Another 23. Easily. We'll never outgrow that. Can you imagine a church where everyone has a circle and loneliness has no one to hang out with? Because as soon as I asked you to say, hey, whisper to somebody, some of you went, because the last thing you want to do is have to whisper to someone and talk to somebody. And it's not because you're antisocial, because you don't feel like you belong yet. And belonging is the beginning of believing and becoming. It's not getting your doctrine right on who Jesus Christ is and understanding the Trinity. It's feeling like you're walking into a church that you could call my church instead of their church. And that's going to happen through connecting to people. A place where loneliness has no one to hang out with. So if you're already in a life group, would you consider breaking away from it for the fall to start a new one, to start a new circle so people could connect? And if you're here and you're a skeptic, you're just here because someone told you there was free cappuccino and they're going to buy your lunch, one, don't order dessert when they're buying your lunch. That's rude, okay? But two, I hope you get a good lunch. But I hope as we look at what Jesus had to say, you realize the power that Jesus had when he prioritized the individual and the person. So we're picking up the passage in Mark chapter 6, verse 30. Jesus is taking his life group on a retreat after a busy time of ministry. I know that sounds like a segue into a sitcom, but that's what he's doing. He's taking his life group on a retreat after a busy time of ministry. The disciples come back and they're telling Jesus, hey, good stuff happened. The apostles gathered around Jesus. They reported to him all they had done and taught. And then, because so many people were coming and going, they didn't even have time and a chance to eat. That's when you know you got a problem. You don't have time to eat. Can I get an amen in the house? Come on, all right, you're with me. Good. Jesus said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. Yeah. Must have been summer, vacation time. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. And I hope you got some of that this summer. Whether you're is a quiet, solitary place where there's nobody around, or whether your is you want a crowded, crazy place like Oceans of Fun, or we have one family in the church, I won't name them, Mike and Michelle Palmer, that went ahead and decided their vacation was, let's go to a bunch of ballparks with lots of 50,000 people, and every single one of them, and the best one was Cleveland, wasn't it? Thank you for affirming that. I appreciate that, guys. But they went to a bunch of ballparks all over the place. Whatever fills your cup that doesn't empty your soul, go for it. So they leave. They get in the boat, and they leave, and everybody watches them leave. So let's pick this up, 33. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. And when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he said to the disciples, turn the boat around and look for a better beach. This one's too crowded. Those who are giggling are going, that's not the Bible I remember. He's pulling our leg. You're right, I'm pulling your leg. Jesus did not say turn the boat around and look for a better beach. He said he saw a large crowd. He had compassion on them. Is that what you had when you pulled up to the beach on your summer vacation and there were no parking spots? Did you have compassion on those? Did you have compassion on the person that took your parking spot when you saw it before they did and you know you saw it before they did? Why did Jesus have compassion for them? Because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Vulnerable. Pray. Not this kind of pray. Pray like a wolf on a sheep. He had compassion on them. Southeast Kansas, Pittsburgh, PSU is filled with people who are hungry and willing to see a boat that they think they want to get on and run ahead to get their FOMO, fear of missing out, so they can get there, get their photo, get their selfie, throw it on their social media and portray their image while they live an imaginary life. They're players without a coach. They're runaways without a protective parent. They're sheep without a shepherd. Easy prey for people who prey on people. And right now, if you want to make a lot of money tax-free, the easiest way to do is to prey on people. And most of us are so lonely in our society, we're very easy prey. The question I would challenge you to ask yourself is, who do I have compassion on? Who do I have compassion on? And would you invite them to your church? Sure, as long as they don't take my seat or my parking spot. Would you invite them to your church? Would you invite them into your life? Whoa, getting a little close there, maybe a few. Would you invite them into your home? What? That draw the line right there. That's where the 55 inch is. In a man's home, it says private castle. And it's easy to say, well, I can't invite them all, so I'll invite none. And if you can't do for one, sometimes we say that means we won't do for any. But wouldn't it be great if you could do for one what you wish you could do for all? And if you can't do it for all of them, what if you just did it for 8? Or maybe Jesus had 12. What if you offered it to 12, even if only 8 showed up? Ask yourself, what if you did open your life, and maybe your home or you shared the responsibilities of hosting a life group? What would it look like? Just for the idea, if you hosted it or helped lead a life group, what would it look like? Would it be chaos? Would it be creative? Would it be, God help us, a 3-hour Bible study on the Old Testament meanings of the name Melchizedek? Hopefully not. What would change in your life if you actually hosted or led a life group? And what would be different in your life in 6 months? What would change? Back to the scripture. Jesus had compassion on them. The disciples did not. Not at all. Not at all. Verse 35. By this time it was late in the day. So his disciples came to him. This is a remote place. It was a suburb of Arcadia. This is a remote place, they said. And it's already very late. Late is a relative term. Late for me is 9:15 p.m. Late for you might be 2:15 a.m. It's already very late. Send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. Excuse number one, it's a remote place. Excuse number two, it's late. Jesus, guys, these people are vulnerable. The disciples, these people are regrettable. I'm so sorry this is where they're at, but it's their problem, not mine. Jesus saw them as sheep without a shepherd. The disciples saw them as regrettable. And I know the ask today is big. Would you consider having a conversation with someone about possibly hosting or leading a circle of people so that people can show up, join in, and be real and be connected like Ryan and Sherelle were? A couple today, where's Kelly Hall? Kelly, where you at? Kelly's way over there. Kelly and Brandon, I'm having lunch with them this week. They moved away a couple months ago, maybe a year already now. A year, that's sad. But they were coming, and you can tell first time they came in, Kelly's here, got the kids, and Brandon's, typical guy coming in. I'm not sure. They ended up getting so connected to a life group. Brandon almost cried when it was time to leave. I'm sure he did it in front of me, but he almost did, didn't he? He almost did. Why? Because the connection. It wasn't because the pastor's teaching is so deep and awesome. No, it was connection to people. Belonging is the beginning of believing and becoming. And you have the key of possibly opening the door for other people to feel like they could belong here. Because a lot of people show up in the parking lot and don't feel like they belong. I could take you to an individual story who showed up in the parking lot with his wife, sat in the parking lot, and then went home. Never got out of the car. And it wasn't because of how anybody treated him at all. And they'd been in the building multiple times before. They were just too nervous to walk in. So the idea of me asking you, if you want me to host or lead people, Pastor, it's people. I'd rather not, man. People are so annoying, bothersome, complaining, demanding, energy draining, and that's just A, B, C, D, E. We could go on to every other letter of the alphabet, couldn't we, without all those people? But the problem is, you also are annoying. What's my B word? Bothersome, complaining, demanding, and energy draining, and I am too, because we're people. If we're going to be a perfect place for imperfect people, we're going to have to reach out to those who are crying out for belonging. And let me tell you who they are. They're sitting in the row beside you. They're in front of you. They're behind you. They parked next to you. They're the ones that want your parking spot when the service is over. Especially if you got a good parking spot. They want your parking spot. You could be the person that opens the door. They're going to be the person that's in front of you as you walk down the row for communion today, because they're a little nervous about it, but you feel so comfortable here. It's no big deal. You're getting ready to call whoever's down at the table by their names, and they're like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And you might be thinking, well, it's easy for an extrovert to do. I'm as introverted as they come. And some of you go, no way. You don't know me very well. You don't know me very well. My idea of vacation is a lonely place, and that's where I spent my 5 days of vacation. But there's no people there, Pastor. Right. Isn't that nice? There's actually a bunch of people there. They're all dead in their graveyard. They were all buried before 1900, way down at the bottom of the hill. And they don't bother me at all when I'm there. To me, the idea of going on a cruise for vacation is like a floating prison you pay for. I don't get it. So the question going through some of your heads is, so is Sunday morning fake? You're out there shaking hands fake? No, because purpose trumps preferences. Always. The purposes that God has put, whatever gifts he's put into me, cannot be fulfilled at the cross at Bethpage, Missouri. They can't be. Purpose trumps preferences all the time. And my purpose is to be used by God, and no one's going to care what I have to say if they don't think I care about them, and that I can call them Ted and Fran Furry by name. That's more important. So Sarah and I have probably launched approximately 20 life groups in the past 6 or 7 years. We're currently part of 3 life groups, because the goal is not comfort, convenience, and consumption. That's what it was when you showed up the first Sunday. I want something that's comfortable, it's convenient for me, and I can just sit there and get what I want. That's great. But if you're still here, it's time for you to help construct what God's church is, compel those to come and contribute to the resources so we can go ahead and reach people like this church was ready to reach you when you showed up. And that will take time, effort, and money. So the question to ask yourself is this: what do I want people to line up and thank me for at the end of my life? I'd like to credit Andy Stanley for that question, but I cannot, because it's his wife that came up with that question. What do I want people to line up and thank me for at the end of my life? Your life was not created to sit in the stands. The stands are for spectators. It was not created to sit on the sidelines. Sidelines are for people who are not qualified to get into the game. You're qualified. If you're saved, you're qualified. And your life was meant to be played, not through others, but for others. So if you led or hosted a life group, what would it look like? Who would be there? Who would you be willing to invite? Who would you get past the fear that they would say, no, I don't want to come over to your house? What would it look like? And whose life could be different in 6 months? Back to the scriptures. The disciples are telling Jesus, send them away, send them away. And Jesus says, you feed them, you feed them. And they're like, whoa. Jesus said, hey, you give them something to eat. And the disciples are like, that would take 8 months of a man's wages. Apparently it was a man's wages because a woman's wages was less, so they still had wage discrepancy in the first century. We still haven't got past it yet. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? Bad idea asking Jesus a rhetorical question. Never do this. Never do this. Because they didn't want Jesus to answer this question. They did not want Jesus to go answer the question. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? Excuse number one, this is a remote place. It's farther out there than Arcadia. Excuse number two, it's too late. Excuse number three, that's a lot of resources, Jesus. It's a lot of resources. Jesus sees people as sheep without a shepherd, vulnerable. The disciples see people as a drag on resources, unaffordable. How do you see people? Ask yourself, how do you see people? Now, I understand you get limited resources, and those resources are time, talent, and treasure. Get it, got it, good. I'm with you on that. But sometimes fear takes over when it's opportunity to pour into people. It might take too much time. I might share too much. I won't have as much. Fill in the blank. I won't have as much time, money, energy, effort, resources. And it really comes down to fear. I'd like to tell you what you should fear. Fear being successful at something that doesn't matter. Fear that. Fear bragging about something that 10 years later you're going to go, I seriously spent time and money on that? Ugh, why did I do that? Back to the scriptures. The disciples are saying, Jesus, this costs too much. Oh, Jesus. What did Jesus say? He didn't have an argument with him. He didn't say, but if we do this and do this. He didn't say, spend 8 months' wages anyways. He said, what do you got? What do you got? I'm not questioning your financial formula on whether it's going to take 8 months' wages. What do you got? How many loaves do you have? And then why that's not in the same sentence, I can only think that perhaps the disciples just kind of stood there. Do you not see the crowd? So Jesus has to say, go and see. Go ahead, guys. Go see. Question to ask yourself, why do I have what I have? Because generally speaking, whatever you have, you think is not enough. And it doesn't matter what God's asking of you. And it may be he's nudging you what we're talking about today, about possibly, opening your home or teaming up with someone, and maybe your church life group meets at the church. Or what are we going to be asked on Judgment Day when we stand before God? Are we going to be asked, how did you enjoy my blessings, or what did you do with them? What did you do with what you had? Not what didn't you do because you didn't have, because we all have a long list of what we don't have. Well, Pastor, I could do a life group if I had a large house and a big yard and perfect children and wrinkle-free clothes and very white teeth. You know, the kind that come in the frame when you buy the frame at Walmart. Those kind of, if I had a house and a family like that, then I could do that. No, you just need space somehow, and that space could even be at a public place. It could be at the library, it could be at the church, for people to show up, join in, and be real. And that's it. So Jesus tells them, hey, I don't care that it might cost 8 months of man's wages. What do you have? So the disciples finally go and figure out what they got. How many loaves do you have? Go and see. When they found out, indicating it took a little bit of time, they said, you can almost catch their tone on this, can't you? 5. 2 fish. Perch, they're small. And in their head they're going, told you, Jesus, now send them away. Let them go to Starbucks. Jesus doesn't even answer them. When they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. Must have been a watery spot of Israel, because Israel's a desert. They had green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Jesus apparently liked structure. Yay for type A people. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. And then he gave them to his disciples to set before the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. I don't know if I have enough. I don't know if I have enough house. I don't have enough Bible. I don't have enough. What you have is not enough. What you have is more than enough. You will have leftovers if you put it into his hands. You will be lacking if you keep it in your own hands. Why do you have what you have? Chances are you have more than what you used to have. May not be. You may be going in reverse. You may have less than what you used to have. Irrelevant. Why do you have what you have? I simply ask you to get out of the stands. Those are for spectators. Unless this is your first, second, or third Sunday, and you're still checking things out, you haven't made it to growth track yet, hey, maybe you're still spectating. But for some, maybe it's time to get out of the stands. And don't think getting in uniform, being on the sidelines is the same as being in the game. You're qualified to be in the game. You're qualified to be in the huddle. You're qualified. And I get that this is a bold ask today. But another passage in Matthew chapter 9, similar situation. When Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless. And there's that line again, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, he used it as a teaching moment, the harvest is plentiful. The workers are few. And I'll tell you next week how many people serve in the church. It's somewhere around 200. That's what we're talking about next Sunday, serving. But ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. And that's what I've been asking this week. And this is who we are. We are a church that forms circles. Just getting someone to sit in a row is not the final end of the success story. So I can tell you what happens if we get someone to sit in a row. Summer comes, baseball comes, or May comes, and it's Mother's Day, and it's graduations, and it's Memorial Day. Then all of a sudden, they're not sitting in a row anymore. Why? Because they don't have any friends here. Because they never connected to another human. They only connected to God and goosebumps from the worship team. And maybe something I said that they thought, oh, that's good, I'm going to put that on Twitter. Trust me, if I said it and it was good and you put it on Twitter, I got it from somebody else. So next month, we have our annual Connect Sunday, September 17th. Everybody say one service? 10 o'clock. So we're not meeting here. We'll be meeting at the Plaster Center. That's the indoor football field at Pitt State. Then we'll go to Gorilla Village and have a big picnic and carnival, and no dunk tank this year. Blame Zeke. Zeke hates the dunk tank. Zeke says it's always cold. Zeke is from Tampa Bay, and Zeke sits in the dunk tank with short sleeve shirts. We cannot get him to wear long sleeve shirts. I don't know what's up. But we'll be having the picnic, and what are we going to do that day? We're going to celebrate circles. I'm going to give you an opportunity to join a circle if you're not in a circle. But I can't ask people to join a circle that doesn't exist. So as the lead shepherd, talking to sheep, would you consider having a conversation about possibly hosting or leading a life group? What's a life group do? It's a group of people that meet regularly, weekly, every other week, to show up, join in, be real. Those are 6 words. Show up, join in, be real. That's it. It's not a mobile Sunday school where you got to sit there and teach for 45 minutes on something in the Old Testament you don't even understand, let alone can spell or pronounce properly. It's prayer, care, and share. Prayer, lift each other up, share some prayer needs, care for each other, connect to each other, and share some God-centered discussion. What does the life group leader do? Ready for rocket science? You help a circle of people to meet regularly, to show up, join in, and be real. So what does that actually mean? It means clear communication from the life group leader. Hey, we're meeting on Tuesday, not Wednesday. We're meeting at the church, not the park. We're meeting at 6:30, not 7. Hey, we're having a taco salad bar. Just clear communication. You can do that. Facebook can help. Home Depot can probably help too. Group participation. That's what the leader brings. Group participation. David, thank you for answering the last 37 questions in a row. Joe, what do you think about this? Group participation. You help with that. Shared ownership. Hey, I led the last 4 weeks. Who will lead next week? And you count to yourself for 5. You don't answer the question. You count to yourself for 5 till someone says, okay, I will. And then you walk them through it, and all of a sudden they realize, hey, man, dude, that was easy. Because it is easy. But it is leadership. And because of that, in terms of our honor code and those who serve, we have one honor code for people who serve in regular situations, and anything in the leadership position, it's a little bit more of a leadership honor code, so there are some simple requirements there. But if you're following Jesus and going forward, hop on board. How does the church itself help life group leaders? Hey, whatever you guys want to discuss in that, we'll make sure there's curriculum available. If we need to buy it, we'll buy it. If it's watch 20-minute video and ask 10 questions, we'll buy the video. What a lot of groups do, in the Empty Nest Life Group that I'm a part of, and the men's Bible study that I'm a part of on Wednesday night, what we do is we go over the sermon questions. There'll be questions put together for this message. And that's what the sheet looks like for this week. Now, it's amazing when we print it out to you, it's actually not near as blurry. Could you do this in a circle of people? All right, one of the start talking questions. What is something that you love in circle form? Could you sit in a group with 8 to 10 people and just say, all right, Pastor gave us these dumb questions to read. Hope you guys were in church on Sunday, heard the message, or watched it online. What is something in circle form that you love? Is there anybody that can't say donut? What's that? Cookies. Pizza. Okay, that was easy. Next question, and you can pick any one of those. What can people do in a circle that's harder in a row? Why do you think belonging is a need in nearly every human? And now we're starting to talk a little bit. We're not really sharing anything personal yet, but we're getting some conversation. Next one. Describe your circle friends in either junior high or high school. Jesus saw people as vulnerable, like sheep without a shepherd. How do you see people? Now we're starting to share a little bit, get a little more open. You can walk somebody through that. So what else do we provide? Child care reimbursement if your group has children in it. The facility usage, you can use the building here. Group games, we have supersized Connect 4 and Jenga if you want to use. We have a fire pit out back you can use. Kitchen items, paper goods, ice. There's a life group leaders conference coming up later this month. We'd love to pay your way and send you, and it's a blast because James River does it, and everything they do is good. You need ice, we got the ice machine there. A conference coming up. The life group leader orientation coming up. We'll give you 2-night all expense paid weekend to wait, no, scratch that. Got carried away there, sorry, budget controls. But if I could give every life group leader a 2-night all expense paid weekend to Branson, Missouri, I would do it. Not to discount what they do, but it's easier to find a backup vocalist someone wants to sing on a platform. That's a much easier sell than will you pour into people who are annoying, bothersome, demanding, complaining, and are sometimes extra grace required, like I am sometimes. Jesus led a small group. Would you consider it? So there's lots of options. You can take a break from your current group. Sarah and I have done that every fall pretty much so far. There's types of groups. You can break the box on the type of group. Don't think it's got to be one mold. Are you a bunch of seniors? You want to have an afternoon group because you always have dinner done by 5:30? Go ahead and have an afternoon group. A marriage mentoring group, a coffee club, a creativity life group. Wait, we already have one. It meets every Tuesday right now. A running life group. Ryan Schwalk and I are preparing a running life group for this fall that is built around the idea of running, and it will operate like a bowling league for runners, but we're still going to connect and build vertical and horizontal relationships in it and show up, join in, and be real. All levels of runners. An outdoor activity group, a hunting group, a common interest group, a breakfast club, a cooking class life group, moms of littles, a work day, a workplace group for those who major, a bicyclist group, whatever. A common interest could be that you can get a circle of people, 4 or 5 or 15, to show up, join in, and be real. Why? Because they're going to stumble. And pity the person who stumbles and has no one around to pick them up. Doesn't have to be large, small is good. You don't have to have Bible knowledge up to here. Show up, join in, be real. Worship team, come on, or I'm going to keep going. But my home isn't. Your home is enough. Do you have 5 loaves and 2 fish? Then you have more than what you need, and when everyone leaves, you're going to have more leftovers than you know what to do with. What are we talking about? We got that covered. How about all the setup stuff? We got that covered. Here's the question you need to ask. What do I want people to line up and thank me for at the end of my life? What do I want them to do? I want people like Ryan and Sherelle to come back, that when they come back to visit, they got to stop by Pittsburgh, not just to get their picture taken with a new gorilla at the stadium, but they want the picture taken with someone they remember from the church they attended and come over to the house and say, hey, will you eat with us at Mall Deli? That's something I want people to line up and thank me for before I die at the end of my life. Stand with me, would you?